Chapter 41 of the Dao De Jing. The Dao, pronounced Dao as an owl, De Jing meaning roughly the book of the way and its virtue, opens with a taxonomy of response. 3 kinds of people hear the same thing. Only one of them laughs. The text treats that laughter not as a failure, but as a certification. Shàng shi wang dao, kin er xing zhai, zhōng shi wang dao, vuo kun yuo wang, zia shi wang dao, da zio zhai, bu zio bu zui wei dao, bu jian yan yu zhai, míng dao yuo mei, jin dao yuo tui, yi dao yuo lei, shang de yuo gu, tai bai yuo ru, buan de yuo bu zu, jian de yuo tu, jai zhen yuo yu, da fan wu yu, da kai wan sheng, da yin zai sheng, da zihang wu zhēn, dao yin wu ming, fu wei dao, shan de kai sheng. The person of highest understanding hears the Dao and practices it diligently. The person of middling understanding hears the Dao and half believes, half doubts. The person of least understanding hears the Dao and laughs out loud. If it were not laughed at, it would not be sufficient to be the Dao. Hence these ancient sayings: the bright path seems dark, the way forward seems like retreat, the level road seems rough, the highest virtue seems like an empty valley, the purest white seems stained, the broadest virtue seems insufficient, the firmest virtue seems unstable, what is most genuinely real seems inconstant. The greatest square has no corners, the greatest vessel is the last to be completed, the greatest sound is barely audible, the greatest form has no shape, the Tao is hidden, without a name, yet it is the Tao alone that is good at both giving and completing. The chapter opens with a sorting. 3 types of people hear the same teaching. The one with deepest understanding hears it and moves, not because it's immediately obvious or comfortable, but because something in them recognizes it. The middle person wavers, believes today, forgets tomorrow. The third person laughs. Here is the move most readers miss. The text does not say the person who laughs is simply wrong. It says their laughter is necessary confirmation. If the Tao could be explained in plain terms and found convincing by everyone on first hearing, it would not be the Tao. The most genuine things don't wear their depth on the surface. Then comes a list of paradoxes, cited as ancient sayings, as if Laozi himself is quoting a tradition already older than him. Each follows the same pattern. The genuine article looks like its opposite to the casual eye. The bright path seems dark. The word for bright here, míng, is the same character used throughout the Dao De Jing for illumination and understanding. The path is clear, but because it offers no easy landmarks and no reassurance, it reads as obscurity. Advancing on this path seems like retreat. Anyone who has tried to let go of something that was harming them, a habit, a need for recognition, a way of arguing that felt righteous, knows this. The movement forward looks, from the outside, like giving something up. The level road seems rough, not because it is rough, but because we have grown accustomed to roads that are paved and signed. The absence of those features reads as difficulty where there is none. The highest virtue seems like a valley. A valley is the lowest point, the hollow place. It receives water, it accumulates, it doesn't assert itself. Laozi uses the valley image across several chapters as a figure for receptivity, for the power that comes from not claiming prominence. The person who absorbs rather than broadcasts, who creates space rather than occupying it, reads as passive. That is the mistake this image corrects. The purest white seems stained. Pure white against something artificially bleached can look dingy. Genuine purity doesn't announce itself, and compared to something that does announce itself, it can seem deficient. The broadest virtue seems insufficient. The person of genuine generosity doesn't keep accounts. There is no ledger, no visible tally. A teacher who gives credit away so freely that students don't feel they were taught. That teacher looks, from the outside, like they haven't done much. This is what the passage means. The greatest square has no corners. A square defined by hard edges is a limited square. Integrity so complete it has nowhere it stops being itself. No place where it ends and something else begins, has no edge to point at. The greatest vessel is the last to be completed. In Chinese, this phrase, Da Kai Wan Sheng, has become a proverb, often used to encourage people whose talents surface slowly, but in context it's pointing at something else. The Tao's largest creations don't look finished. They exceed what done usually means. The greatest sound is barely audible. The greatest form has no shape. Both move in the same direction. At the extreme of a category, the category dissolves. Sound beyond what sound usually is. Form beyond what visibility can capture. And then, the Tao is hidden without a name. This connects to the very first line of this text. The Tao that can be named is not the eternal Tao. The Tao doesn't occupy a category. It is the condition for things having categories at all. The closing line, Only the Tao is good at both giving and completing. It gives without keeping accounts. It brings things to their completion without announcing that it has done so. What you take from this chapter depends on where you meet it. If you've dismissed something because it looked too simple, or too strange, or too much like retreat, this chapter is a quiet challenge to that reflex. The things most worth attention often don't signal their value. Laozi's list of paradoxes is a training in learning to see what doesn't immediately resolve. There is also something here about judging completion. We tend to evaluate by what we can measure, what has a visible edge. A person who develops slowly is not undeveloped. A form without sharp definition is not formless. The absence of the expected marker does not mean the absence of the thing. Not every passage offers a takeaway in the ordinary sense. This one asks something harder, to hold open the possibility that what you've already dismissed might be exactly what deserved your attention. What laughs at the Tao is, in a way, proof that it exists, and what the Tao sustains, it sustains without anyone noticing the sustaining.